We want you to understand that the entire universe is ready to comply with you. You just have to find the balance that lets the universe comply. And so the way you do this, the way you selfishly put yourself back in the place that you allow well-being to flow to you in the way you deserve and in the way that is absolutely normal, is just through trial and error. In other words, you throw some fits and see where it gets you. And you soften and appreciate and see where that gets you. In other words, it truly is person by person, subject by subject, just feeling your way until you feel it click into place. It really, really is that. So we can't give you one process or even one way of approaching this, because there are lots of different subjects in your experience that might require a little different response from you. Because on some subjects, your vibration on the emotional scale is way up here in appreciation. On other subjects, it's over here in fear. In some subjects, it's over here in a feeling of overwhelmment. In some subjects, it's all the way up here in ecstasy and joy and satisfaction. And so there's no one way. You just got to pick a subject and then talk about it with one thing in mind as you've got your ear to the ground. How can I approach this subject, which must be important to me because it keeps coming up, in a way that feels increasingly better? So what we want you to feel, and it's what we've been talking about all day here today, is that the universe will provide anything and everything that you want. In other words, there are so many resources. This universe will accommodate all of you in delightful and effective ways. You just have to let yourself off the hook as being one who must find a provider. In other words, here's what we are saying. You're wanting to see universal forces. Call it God, call it inner being, call it universal forces, call it source energy, call it this energy stream of well-being, call it whatever resonates well with you when you name it. But try to accept that it will always provide for you. In other words, if you could resist the temptation to explain how far you've come. Now, we know there is some sense of satisfaction in that, because especially if you're here and you want to be someplace different, sometimes it is satisfying to say, well, look how far I've come. That gives me expectation that I can still go further. Yeah. And that's wonderful. We want to hear. But if you get too heavy-handed in explaining where you've been, then that's why you say it feels like it's two different personalities. And it is two different personalities. There's the connected you and the disconnected you. Those are too strong of words, because you're never disconnected, but there's the more allowing of who you are you, and there's the less allowing of who you are you see. And you get so that you can feel which drum you're beating. And that's why it's an emotional journey. How I feel is everything, and what I do is inconsequential. But how I feel about what I do is everything, but what I do does not make any real difference. And we want to guide you to that. But how about this? This is a different tact. How about everything that I think that I need to do is all in order to propel me to some place that when I get there, I think I will be happier. So everything that I am doing, no matter what it is, all of my lists of right and wrongs are all about me getting to a manifestation that I believe then I will be happier. So why don't I take a shortcut and just go get happy? And once I get to that happy place and test it, we encourage you to test this. This is not a theory that we are practicing for the first time on humans. This is the way the universe operates. In other words, everything about law of attraction and this inclusion-based universe is about this. And the happier you are, the more you allow all of the things that you've been saying you want, you see.
So the unconditional love for myself, I just kind of want to wrap it up on this part.
So let's talk about what the unconditional is that we really mean in this scenario.
I wanted to say it in my words, though, to make sure I'm
You're not
really
even going to come close.
Grasping it.
You're not even going to come close.
All right.
Because you just led us out here on the leading edge to something that you want to consider that you never have before. So we'll go first and then we'll hear.
Yes, ma'am.
So unconditional, in the sense of what we're talking about here, means it would be proportionate to mentally throwing the ball, but not physically needing to pick one up. it would be about, and that's a sort of scanty basis. We'll give you more.
I got you.
We'll give you more.
No worries.
It's like unconditional means finding the feeling and that being everything. Conditional is, okay, I'll find the feeling, I'll work this out, and it will produce these results. But now you're twirled up in the results, and since the results haven't happened yet, you're introducing resistance into the equation, and now you're in a state of resistance, so it can't go where you want it to go. So unconditional is caring singularly about the emotion that you have the ability to produce without needing results. So let's just call the condition the physical result, the physical manifestation, the person showing up in a relationship, or the money showing up in your bank account, or the improvement in your bodily condition. Those are conditions over which you really don't have immediate control.
Sure.
You have eventual control, but not immediate control. So if you will exercise unconditional alignment, meaning alignment for the sake of alignment, not for the alignment for the ulterior motive of improving a condition, now you're unconditional in your alignment, and now the conditions all have to improve. Can you hear it?
Sure. And I feel like I understand that more and more, and viscerally I'm actually practicing it, where I really don't care about the manifestations, because I understand I already have momentum rolling in a lot of directions I want to be headed in.
Let's say that better.
Oh.
I care about every one of those manifestations.
Okay.
I just don't need to take score right now because I'm wise enough to know they are evolving and will appear at the perfect place and the perfect point and the perfect time and the perfect...
Okay, so here's my question then.
In other words, right now, I don't care about the absence of them because I know the absence of them is not a permanent condition.
It's temporary.
That's different than saying I don't care, isn't it?
Okay,
I don't care about the absence of them because I know that the absence of what I want is a temporary condition.
Yes.
And in my absence of angst about it, I'm producing an atmosphere of allowing that is the path of least resistance, which is going to produce the conditions that I want.
Yes.
Isn't this interesting? I have to be unconditional in order to get the condition. We're going to speak back and forth from your perspective and ours, and you'll know which we're doing. So we'll start first with you. I've been around for a while, and I have come to the realization that there is so much potential for me, potential for alignment, and therefore potential for all other things, because alignment leads to all other wonderful things. It's come to my attention that there's potential for my alignment that I'm not quite reaching my full potential. I've been practicing thoughts, I guess a lot of people do. I've been practicing thoughts that haven't really let me understand who I am, how I have purpose, how I have value. I can often love others. In fact, it's what my default setting is. I turn my attention to others often, and that gets me going, and that always feels good. But it's hard for me to let love into me. I don't know why. I've been blocking it for a long time. I don't really even understand why. Just a habit that got started. I didn't understand it. I developed patterns. Other people responded to those patterns. So I suspect that from very early age, people wanted to love me, and I just wouldn't let it in because I felt unloved. Now, isn't that just a ridiculous, vicious circle that I got going for myself? I felt unloved, so I didn't let love in, and because I didn't let love in, I felt unloved. And then I didn't feel loved, so I didn't let love in, and then because I didn't let love in, then I didn't feel loved, and then people couldn't love me because I wasn't letting love in. And I just developed a sort of pattern that nobody could really see, because on the surface, I looked sort of normal and behaved sort of the way that I'd learned to behave, but I don't really understand why I wasn't really letting love in. But the one thing that has come from all of that is I've come to a keen awareness that I want to let myself be loved. I thought I wanted to be understood. And as I've been listening to Abraham for a while, I realized that that's not really the quest, because being understood is really an impossible thing, because when you ask somebody to understand you, you need to immediately snap them into your same vibration. And that's an impossible thing. Everybody's got their own vibration going. So I think somewhere I got confused. The desire for love, I think I got it confused with the desire to be understood. And I also think that I got confused about where the love was coming from. I think I thought the love would come from other people who didn't understand me, instead of from Source, who always does. So there's two things I kind of got out of kilter. I got confused about being loved and being understood. And I looked for people that couldn't really understand me to be the reason that I felt love. I realize now how screwy that whole thing was and why it didn't work. And I'm relieved that I'm not failing at something that should work because it couldn't work. So I'm sort of feeling some relief that I was looking for love in all the wrong places and getting mixed up about whether I was really wanting love from them or understanding from them, which really is not possible. So I also understand that when I'm in a sort of bad place and I want someone to love me or understand me, that they've got to go to the same bad place I am to understand me. Those two things don't go together. I want them to love me and understand me, but they can't understand me unless they get on my vibe. And if they're on my vibe, my not good feeling vibe, then they can't love me. No wonder it didn't work. Looking for love in all the wrong places. Is this making any sense to any of you? Relating a little bit even? So now I've kind of got that squared away. Now I realize that as lovely as people are, and as much as I love so many of them, and as much as I love being in this body and here in this world and on this leading edge, that I want to express love to them, but mostly I want to connect with love. Because if I don't let myself be loved, if I don't let this vessel that is me open to love, then I can't really love anybody else, not in a way that's meaningful to them. So a lot of us are just running around a little bit broken. We're not letting love in, but we're trying to let love out. So we're not going back to the well of replenishment. We're just loving and serving and trying to be of value and getting depleted and getting exhausted and getting overwhelmed because we're not letting it in. It's like never breathing air in and always breathing it out. You can't get too far with that. Pretty soon you got to start breathing it in or you have nothing to breathe out. And so now I'm more clear about all of this. So I'm no longer wanting to look to others for that replenishment, although sometimes you can find it. Sometimes somebody's all tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and they got it going and blowing. And when they hold me as their object of attention, I can feel it. And I do like that, but I don't want to depend on somebody else's connection for that because they've got stuff they're doing too. And I don't need anybody else's connection. I've got my own straight line to it. I've got my own vortex. I've got my own valve that I can open wide to it. And often I do. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do it more easily than not. It sort of depends on the momentum that got going. But more and more, I accept these things. I know that Source exists. And I know that my inner being is a big part of that collective consciousness of Source. And that my inner being is in an undivided way focused upon me and knowing everything about me and loving me anyway. That my inner being is loving my becoming and is never holding me responsible for what I've come to because I'm eternal. I'm never going to get done. And there's always going to be within me a gap between what life has caused me to reach for and what I've allowed myself to catch up with. And I've been beating up on myself so long about that gap because I reach for more and then I don't go and then I feel bad about the gap, but my inner being never does that. And, I'm just figuring this out. The very reason that I don't feel love or that I feel unloved is because my inner being is there and I haven't joined my inner being. In other words, the negative emotion that I feel that I've been calling people not loving me or my inner being not loving me or me not letting love in has only been because I have reached and have not caught up with what I've reached for. And so the very fact that I can feel negative emotion, which feels not love, is my proof that the love exists.